Hello and welcome back to another devlog on Magic Life Sim and Puppeteer, my game's procedural animation system, which is also my undergraduate comp sci capstone. The end of the month and the Super Alpha demo release day are quickly approaching, but what's even closer is my spring break, which is next week. My classes have thankfully been light this week, so I was able to tackle two big features: a total rewrite of the player controller and a first pass at the inventory system. Since I've talked arguably too much about procedural animation, let's mix things up. Let's talk about the inventory system, Packrat. A little something about myself is that I am absolutely horrendous at managing inventory in games. I'm talking throwing everything into a random chest and then forgetting about it. So if I can build an inventory system that keeps a Packrat like me organized, it should cover basically everyone's basic needs. Ultimately, this will take months to fully build and polish, but for now, let's talk about architecture, and along the way, I'll cover what I've built so far. So, what is an item? Well, we can split the concept of an item into a few basic parts, one part being the shared descriptive data. This includes its name and what it looks like. For Packrat, we'll wrap all of this data into a scriptable object class named item definition. Scriptable objects are great as they allow you to pull data away from the game object component instance model. Instead of individually modifying the data of multiple prefabs, we have a single source of truth that we can modify. Now, a downside of scriptable objects is that they're meant to be edited inside of Unity. If we open one of these files up in a text editor, we get a lot of behind-the-scenes variables that Unity needs, and we definitely don't want to mess with them. But accidents can happen, so at some point, we'll build another data model that can be edited as a plain text file and then converted into an item definition at runtime. This will tackle two big issues. First, I am awful at spelling and grammar, and Unity doesn't have a checker for either of those. Second, and fingers crossed on this one if we ever get to this point, if the game ever needs translation support, a translator won't need access to the whole Unity project. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself at this point, so let's get back on track. The biggest responsibility of an item instance is handling quantity. Let's say you've got an apple instance in your pocket with a quantity of, let's say 10. If you pick up another apple instance off the ground, the one in your pocket should consolidate the incoming instance into itself, bringing it up to 11, and then the zeroed out apple instance will just go away. So far, I've built a try combine function to handle this case, and the overflow case with stack limits. If an item instance can't consume all of an incoming item instance, it should take as much as it can. Eventually, we'll also build a try separate function, but for the sake of the Super Alpha demo, we can skip that for now. The next piece of our inventory system is actually a two-parter. The inventory holds a list of slots, where each slot can hold either an item instance or nothing at all. This layer also handles item instance merging, but specifically in the case of different item definitions. If a player drags and drops two slots with different item definitions, it'll swap the contents of them instead. Another responsibility we'll eventually want from the inventory class is the ability to load and save its contents. Like item definitions, we'll save it out as a text file so it can be modified if needed. Since my game is single player, I would rather give the players the option to edit their own save file in the case that something goes horribly wrong, like a glitched item that they can't remove in-game, but they can remove it in the file. The next layer will actually live in the scene. It's the inventory manager component. Anything that can hold an item will need one. That chest in the corner, inventory manager. Your pocket, inventory manager. Your cursor picking up an item, inventory manager. At least I think that's the best approach right now, but we'll figure out that later. There's nothing too special about this class, as it's really just a bridge between Unity's component land and the inventory class living in pure C# land. Now, the last layer of Packrat we're going to talk about is the interaction layer. We don't need to worry about art and UI design quite yet, we just got to make sure that the whole system is actually working. So I whipped up a text renderer that iterates through an inventory and builds a string to display. And just like that, we've got absolutely nothing in our pockets. So I whipped up another component that lets me inject items directly into the player's pockets through the inspector. And just like that, we can see that this thing is actually working. Now once we get a proper UI going, we don't want to be redrawing this every single frame. I don't know too much about the new UI toolkit system since I don't use it, but the old system works by procedurally generating meshes, and that can get expensive. So rather than redrawing the UI every single frame, we should only redraw when the inventory has actually changed. We'll add an event to inventory that the text renderer can subscribe to. Much like you should subscribe if you're enjoying this video. Sorry, I just couldn't resist, the joke is right there. Now, I would be lying if I said I didn't add a fun feature way too early in development. I want to give the player a way to avoid opening up their full inventory UI as much as possible, as it halts gameplay for a split second. It's a feature I've desperately wanted more games to adopt, and I almost never see it done, even though it's existed for quite a while. So, in Stardew Valley, when you press tab, the hotbar cycles out. Since our inventory is just an array of slots, all we need to do is take the first n amount of slots and move them to the back. Then all that's left is to notify the rendering layer of the change. And with that, I think we've got a pretty solid first pass at an inventory system. Now let's switch gears and talk about rewriting the player controller. The previous version I built last summer crammed pretty much everything into one long class. I haven't really touched that system since, because I knew that for every new feature I add, it's gonna take significantly longer and longer, as it's gonna risk breaking the other features that have already been made. So if we add in swimming, there's a good chance that walking would break. We can't totally avoid this issue, but we can make it a lot easier to work with finite state machines. We'll start our rebuild by extracting out the key features from the old version into their own classes. The big one here being the collide and slide implementation, which is responsible for redirecting the player's velocity along the surface of other colliders. Without collide and slide, the physics system would just stop us the second we start moving into a wall. Next, we'll create a new player controller component with 3 main responsibilities. 1, querying the player's environment, like checking whether or not the player is grounded. 2, querying the active state to get back a velocity vector. And 3, forcing a state transition when needed, like if the player is falling. If we scroll through the main player controller class, we can see it's mostly set up for the state machine, which is exactly what I want. Just like the dragonfly from the last video, any fields primarily associated with a particular state will live in a partial class alongside its corresponding state file. So far, we've got idling, running, jumping, and falling. Luckily, this process is super straightforward. I can thank the dragonfly and the jelly shroom for being good practice with finite state machines last week. It took hardly any time to add in a dodge roll state that locks your direction in exchange for some faster movement. Honestly, it took far longer just to remember how to add a new keybind with the new input system, but For now, let's call it here for the character controller and move back on to doing procedural animation. 2 big changes from the last video is that I'm now using a stride tracker to drive the pose-to-pose running animation. Every time we move, we accumulate the distance we moved and divide it by our stride's length. If we tune it just right, we don't feel like we're sliding as badly. To get us all the way though, we'll need to add some vertical bobbling, but that'll come later. The next big change is that I added a walking animation. Now I doubt I'll have the player walking much, as I want running to be precise enough to control and do everything. Instead, we're using it as an in-between state from idle to running. To drive the blending, we'll take the magnitude of any directional input and smooth it over a couple frames. Compared to earlier, this feels much more natural. Finally, I've got one last thing to talk about, and it's more of a fun side thing when working with finite state machines. With my state machine setup, you need to explicitly define each state and its transitions to and from other states. It's a little hard to picture how everything is connected, and it will only get more complicated from here. Luckily, visualizing graphs, that topic has came up a few times across both of my majors and my classes, math and comp sci. So while we were talking about website SEO in business class, I threw together a quick Python tool that takes in a file, pulls out the matching text with regex, and spits out some GraphViz text. If I drop this text into a GraphViz rendering website, I get a nice little visual. I don't imagine I'm going to be using this super often, otherwise I would have built in the graph rendering into the Python script, but I thought it was neat and I wanted to share it. Plus, I imagine later on when I need to come back to an entity that I haven't looked at for like a couple months, looking at this graph is gonna like help me understand and remember what I did. And with that, I think we're at a great place to stop for this episode. Thank you so much for watching the development of Magic Life Sim. If you enjoyed, consider subscribing. The eventual goal is to get partnered and to have a little bit of income to fuel Magic Life Sim's development. Every little bit helps. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. I'll see you guys in the next one.